What's going on, everybody? This is Fry. So today I am going to be going through all of the plants that have been changed in one way or another during the last balance patch. There was a lot to get through. I'm going to have to do the zombies in a separate video because it's just too much. This was absolutely massive, and let's just hop into it. By starting off with Galacta-cactus. So Galacta-cactus has been nerfed from 2 to 2-1. It only has 1 health. It's still an extremely good card, both in terms of aggro and in terms of controlling opponents in some situations, like if they play Headstone Carver or Con Man. This ends up being even a better control card than it was before. At the end of the day, though, it was overall better as a 2-2. It's not going to be an S tier anymore, but I think this is still a very solid card that you're basically going to still be auto-including in almost every single deck. You gotta just really watch out. Your Galacta-cactus is now when one dies, it splashes to the other. It's also obviously still going to have problems with Forget-Me-Nots or anything else with 1 health. So I think you don't necessarily run 4 of these, you just run 2 or 3, but I think it's still a really, really solid card, and I'll put it in A tier, as again, it's still a very good aggro and control card. The next card is Gardening Gloves. Gardening Gloves, instead of drawing a plant, is now going to be conjuring you a plant trick, which is much worse. So before Gardening Gloves was pretty bad, and now it's actually worse. This card is more fun because it has the conjure synergy, I guess, if you have Captain Cucumber, but it also just ends up being more fun. But it's always better to draw a card in your actual, again, deck than conjuring something random. And for 2 costs, this really doesn't do enough for just moving a plant, so I'm putting it in F tier competitively, but if this was a fun tier list, it would definitely be scoring higher. The next is Photosynthesizer, which actually became 2 costs, and now it's back to 1 cost, so this is absolutely going to be an S tier card. This is really, really essential to any Guardian tempo deck that you are doing. It just does so much in terms of keeping your guys alive. And also drawing a card, triggering your Dino Roars, making Pecanolith and Health Nut do more damage, and yeah, Photosynthesizer, if anything, is a busted card and should be here. We'll keep it for now in S tier. Tricarrotops, so it's funny, now, you know, when Photosynthesizer costs 2, so Tricarrotops is a lot worse, but now that it costs 1, I mean, it's a huge synergy, obviously, with Tricarrotops. This went from 3 health down to 2 health. You're basically really now want to mostly play your Tricarrotops, either if your opponent commits a dry zombie on turn 2, then you can spam this on 2, or just wait till turn 3. Play with Photosynthesizer, with Holoflora, with Lightspeed Seed, anything that's drawing cards or adding something to one of your plants. You know, drawing cards will definitely trigger the Tricarrotops. I don't think this is Double Mint. Double Mint doesn't grow when you draw a card. This is a lot easier to add stats to kind of get it away from that initial weak phase than Double Mint is. I still think this is a solid card. I haven't tested the new Tricarrotops, but I think it is in B tier. I think there's definitely going to be other options that are going to be equal or better than Tricarrotops, but yeah, the fact this dies to Bungie and Extinction Event is a pretty big nerf, but it's not. I'm going to put this in B tier. By the way, guys, I didn't explain, is that we're going to be doing a tier list. I was kind of reluctant to start doing a tier list now, you know, because I haven't really tested all the cards. So this essentially is my first impressions tier list. I've tested some of the cards in the patch, probably most of them in one way or another. I've at least experimented with a little bit, but I feel like in order for me to really have a good idea and make like a really solid, confident tier list, I would really need to be, you know, spend basically the next 2 months trying all the deck ideas and all the cards in multiple decks. You can't just try a card in one deck and say, oh, it's not good now. Yeah, obviously it takes a lot more to have a really informed, educated opinion. So everything that I'm saying on this tier list is all just my first impression from testing the cards a bit and how I think it's going to go, but I'm sure that when I remake this tier list, hopefully in a couple of months after I've really given the cards their fair due, I'm sure a lot of my opinions will change, so stay tuned for that in like March or whatever. And we'll just try to really grind as many decks as possible between now and then. Now, Marine Beam, this buff from 3-2 to 3-3 is a big deal. This is going to be one of the staples in amphibious decks, particularly with Beta Carotina and Citron, who have the Smarty class, which is the other amphibious class. The fact is 3-3-3 base stats, even without any buffs, sticking this in the water, this is a good plant. with Amphibious, and the fact it can be a 3-cost 4/4 or 5/5 is really amazing. Don't get greedy with this. Don't like start playing this on turn 5 just to get a little extra 1/1 buff. Play this as a 3-cost 4/4. It's a really, really strong card. I think this is going to be, again, it's really useful in a minimal amount of decks, but it is going to be a strong card. I'll put it in B tier. The next one we got Primal Walnut. Went from 9 health to 8 health. Doesn't really affect the card that much. I do think that, again, this is not, I did the Pecanolith deck. I didn't even run Primal Walnut. There was no room for it. I think this is a pretty good card, not just in Pecanolith decks, but being a big wall, and it's really difficult to deal with. Obviously, it's very weak to deadly. Where does Primal Walnut go on this tier list? It's a pretty good card. I think just because of its overall hard to find it justifying a deck slot, it's C tier, but it could be like low B. Moving right along, we got Spikeweed Sector. This one's really, really sad. I think this card, even when it cost 2, was kind of like becoming unplayable because it doesn't really take out a 2-cost card on turn 2. Most 2-cost cards have 3 health if they're just being played dry. Even 1-cost cards very often have 3 health if they're being played dry on the zombie side. At 3 costs, this is going to be hard to really justify ever running. Plant environments are kind of dead right now. I mean, I guess you can just run this because no one's going to play around it anymore, would be the only justification for it. But Spikeweed Sector seems really, really sad, and it's going to be all the way down in D tier. Thank you, Crim Elzy.
Oh, wow. Ooh, oh, I see.
Next, we got Mirror Knot. So Mirror Knot was changed from 8 health to 11, which makes it a lot more powerful with Pecanolith. It's also Bullseye, which makes it a lot more powerful with Pecanolith. You can see the Grass Knuckles deck I've already posted with OTK Mirror Knot. It's only doing 1 damage now instead of 2. I think that this is overall better than it used to because of the health, and again, the fact that Bullseye now is just not going to be charging your opponent's block meter. Combining this with some other win condition, this isn't going to do enough damage to usually just do 20 damage with Mirror Knot, but combining this with a different win condition like we did in the Pecanolith deck, and I'm really looking forward to doing the Spadal deck with the Hot Lavas and stuff, a card that got buffed. I think this card is actually quite good, and I'll put it in A tier. Next, we are looking to the Prickly Pear. Again, this went from 4 to 5 cost. It went from, doing 4 damage to the opponent's zombie to now 2 damage directly to the face. It's just a really bad Mirror Knot. If you think about this as like doing direct damage to the opponent's face, that only works on itself, and it costs more. This absolutely useless card you should never run in any deck, and it's going in F tier. What am I going to do with Smackadamia? So again, this is very expensive. It went from, again, 4/4 stats to 4/5, so it's a 4/7. There's also no fruitcakes to take this out. I'm definitely looking forward to experimenting with Smackadamia. It's going to be niche, but a solid card that's niche, which is basically how I'm developing the C tier class. And that's where that is going to go. Next, we got Tough Beets. It went from 6/1 to now 2/2 armor. It's going to be growing. So again, if you have 3 plants on the board, and plants and zombies on the board, this is now going to be a 5/5. If there's 6 on the board, this is going to have huge stats. It's just a stat card, and again, it's going to be hard to really justify running this as a 5-cost card over Pecanolith these days, which is just such a bigger, more solid, much more impactful card at exactly the same cost. Man, the 5-cost Guardian cards. This is honestly, I'm gonna have to put this in D tier because I don't think it's really gonna be seeing much play and really worth running in a deck. On the other hand, Gravitree went from 7/7 to now it's untrickable, and the untrickable is a pretty big deal. I mean, the fact that, again, this doesn't die to rocket science, obviously Fruitcake is gone, but, just cut down to size. Whenever I see opponents play Gravitree, I mean, this card takes over the games. It also has armor, which is really ridiculous. So it's can't be removed by tricks. You end up stuffing so many minions into this until it dies. I do think this card is actually really, really legit, and I can't wait to try it out in some decks. It's either in low A tier or high B tier. The Untrickables are a really big deal. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is actually a low A tier card. Even though it is expensive, this card is a really, really big deal. This is going to be like, think of Undying Pharaoh being untrickable is basically what this card does. Think of Soul Patch being untrickable is the kind of effect that this does have on boards, especially you're putting it into different environments that have effects, like even just some lava or like a bog. It's really, really effective. I'm going to put this in low A tier as a placeholder, but I'll really know more once I'm able to test this a lot. All right, we're moving on to the Kabloom. So we got Hot Lava here at 0. I think running a couple of these again. So you obviously have the Mirror Nut deck that, you know, also is running with Spit-Out, is also running Hibernating Berry. The fact this costs 0 makes it really, really useful. Because it's really, really inefficient for opponents to answer this in terms of, you know, playing an environment on top of it. You're playing this just for 0. It'll be getting immediate value. You can play this the same turn as a Mirror Nut, the same turn as a Hibernating Berry. I think this is even going to be more useful, though, in terms of just being a cheap answer to Area 22 and Hunting Grounds and Black Hole. Now this is cheaper than ever, even though, again, plants, you know, zombies have last say with environments. I think this is actually going to see some play, and I really actually would love to experiment running a couple Hot Lavas and some decks, and also, again, just some early game control. You're able to take out, sometimes this will just, you know, remove a zombie off the board that only has 1 health. I think this is a solid card. I'm going to be putting it in B tier. Next, we've got Blooming Heart. Blooming Heart went from 2-2 to 2-1. This is a huge nerf. This is a really big problem for Blooming Heart. It's very, very weak at 1 health. Again, this card anyway before was doing 2 normal, not bullseye. And then the next turn, you know, 3, and it was a hard card to get surviving. This is not a very good card now at 1 health, but I think it's still going to have some use, so we'll put it in C tier. Going a little out of order, we got Puff-shroom, which went from costing 1 in the patch, and now it went down to costing 0. When it cost 1, it literally would have been an F tier. There would basically be no justification ever to run Puff-shroom. It would be like basically a Shellery that's worse, and Shellery itself is not an amazing card, maybe a little underrated. Now that Puff-shroom is in, it costs 0 though, it's going back into S tier. I really think Puff-shroom in aggro, any kind of aggro deck, Pine Clone, Onion Rings, just a really, really good combo card. Cob Cannon, which is still actually a decent card. We'll get to that in a second. Puff-shroom is staying in its former glory in S tier. Very, very useful Jack of all trades card. All right, what am I gonna do with invasive species? You know, people are saying just do invasive species on 2 with lava. You could just, that's another combo, and they're both in the Kabloom class. And all of a sudden, you got like a 5-3. Hitting, it's a 4-3 hitting their face, which is a lot for turn 2. I'm really looking forward to doing that combo. This is a tough one. This is a shot in the dark because I haven't tested the 2-cost invasive at all. I just haven't gotten to it. I'm going to, like a lot of other cards, but Spikeweed Sector's nerfed. You're only going to be able to really utilize this with Hot Lava. Which other environment would you even... I wish plant environments weren't so sad. Maybe with Nightcap, you can put it into Bog. All right, because it's going to be hard, except for maybe with Hot Lava, which is a sad way of giving one of your guys extra 3 attack. I'm going to have to put this in C tier. I think it's going to be a little bit too hard to activate, but you can put this in zombie environments too. This might end up being a lot better than I'm giving it credit. Next, we got, oh boy, we got Seedling. Guys, this is a card I've been testing quite a lot. I'm also running the Atomic Bombegranate, which is making the 2 health Seedlings, but let's just talk about Seedling itself. I really think this is actually a very, very decent card, even though it just has the 2 health. This can sometimes just turn into a 4 or 5 cost card and basically just win you the game on the spot. 2 health is not a laughing. Again, you have to play this carefully. It still dies to all the Bungee Plumbers and the extinction events and stuff. But the upside of Seedling is really, really cool. There's a lot of cards also that this used to turn into that were mediocre that have been buffed. A lot of the cheap cards, all the cards here on the tier list. It's going to be hard to put this above B tier, But I do think I am going to be putting this in B tier together with Triceratops because I really do think that this is solid. And again, instead of Triceratops, it's going to grow basically same stats. It's going to grow a little bit. This is going to burst. Obviously, can turn into a little one-cost card, but the upside is really, really there. And again, this doesn't die to nibble or the little tiny one damage trapper territory. There's just so many things this doesn't die to anymore. Really happy with that. All right, here we go. Wild Berry. Wild Berry is like a super high risk, high reward card. It only has 1 health, but this does 6 to your opponent now. And it also, they need to remove it. It's only bad if they remove it with a trick or an environment, but if they're using a zombie, you can't trade well with a 2-cost card that's doing 4 damage. So there's no good trades against Wild Berry, I guess, except like Teleportation Zombie or a Space Time the next turn. Wild Berry is a legit card. If this hits your opponent 1 time, just on turn 2, they overcommitted, you stick a Wild Berry on the board, a third of their health basically is gone. You're doing 6 out of 20, which is almost a third of their health. Wild Berry is a big deal. This is going to be the face of aggro when it comes to plants going forward. Really excited to see what happens if you can, you know, have some lane manipulation or have some kind of way of adding health, maybe with Photosynthesizer. Honestly, screw Triceratops Photosynthesizer. We're living in the era of spit out Wildberry Photosynthesizer. I'm putting this in A tier because I really think that, again, it hits face 1 time and then it dies. For 2 costs, it's like 2 berry blasts to their face. It's like the damage is done. Really, really solid, extremely solid, borderline overpowered card. Next, we are moving on to Sizzle. This one, this is a really, really solid card. Obviously, historically, it's been F tier, but now it's 3 costs. It does 5 damage. This is going to be basically auto-include in any tempo or control deck. Maybe even aggro because it's just a great way of clearing lanes. 5 damage is a lot for 3, and this is easily going in S tier. This is a really, really good card. I don't think it's grossly overpowered. There's a lot of things still that this does not kill that have 6 health, but this is a really, 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 really solid card, and you can run 4 copies of that in basically every Kabloom deck. We have a card that has been severely nerfed. This was the Veloci-radish Hunters. It's been nerfed to Veloci-radish Packmate. And because this name sucks, this is going in F tier. Absolute trash card. Next, we are doing Zapricot. Zapricot has been gone from 4-2 to 4-1. Oh, my baby Zapricot. I've ranted about this a million times. The only reason this got nerfed is because it had a high win rate in aggro solar flare, and that was a good deck. Not just because of Apricot, it was just a good, cheap, budget, high win rate deck, and that deck got demolished. Oh, where are we going to put it? This probably isn't even worth running anymore at 1 health, to be honest. And if you just compare it to, like, Wildberry, this is wildly inferior. Maybe we'll find a niche deck for this, and maybe that, I don't think aggro solar flare. Honestly, they killed my boy Zapricot. This is going to be an F tier. We're not actually going to ever run this card ever again at 1 health. And it makes me very sad, especially with Nibble arguably being buffed, and there's a lot of Nibbles and Beastly also. You're never going to get away with this on 3-on-2. You can get away with it with a big upside. On 3, I'd say just jump in a lake. Sorry, Zapricot. I'm putting you honestly where you belong. Next, we got Transfiguration. This is going to be the card that is going into double S tier. If you've been playing PvZ Heroes at all over the last few weeks, you will know that Transfiguration is an extremely oppressive, overpowered, so much fun. Like, if there's going to be a card in PvZ Heroes that is going to be an SS tier and is just going to be meta-defining, let it be something as fun as Transfiguration. The fact is a 4-7, and Fruitcake, by the way, was nerfed, so Fruitcake doesn't do 7 damage anymore. You basically either need to have rocket science or you lose the game as zombies. You lose in Transfiguration. Transfiguration's also in the Kabloom class, so it's always going to be in the same class as Imitator. Imitator on 3, Transfiguration on 4 is an absolute monster. You can't even chip away at this health because it transforms every turn. It essentially heals itself every turn. I guess you just gotta hope that the next turn it turns into a Star Starfruit, and you have a way of dealing 2 damage, but otherwise, I mean, this is a monster. This not only is huge stats and value the turn it's played in the next turn, but eventually this will be turning into, you know, cob cannons and great zucchinis and dragons and cornucopias. Molecule does transform Transfiguration, but it will still maintain its ability, so you can use Molecule to turn this, you know, it turns into a 5-cost card, Molecule into a 6. It'll still keep on leaping to a 7-8 cost card after that. This is absolutely ridiculous. Totally busted card. I mean, this is the card. Sizzle is like, okay, but this card is just not fair, especially because Fruitcake is no longer a thing. Moving right along to Atomic Bombegranate. I think this might be right now the most underrated card in the entire game. I'm really surprised I'm not seeing as many people run Bombegranate as I am like running Fig. Fig obviously is the better card, but like Bombegranate, this is so solid. This is going to be, again, it's a sticky card. It's a lot of attack. It doesn't really have low health because if you kill this, then you have 3 more minions. On average, when you have 3 seedlings popping off, this has been buffed to now making 2 seedlings to 3 seedlings. Even if you're getting 2 seedlings, one of them is going to be real. I mean, let's say one of them turns into just a 3/3. It turns into a 3-drop. I mean, just look at the stats of Bombegranate and how difficult it is to remove this card. This is a really, really big deal. The fact it's making, again, a seedling in its lane, it basically makes twice as many seedlings as it used to. This is a really, really big deal because, again, usually the right lane, it'll die. It's a zombie there. The left lane sometimes is full. This is a really, really big deal of a card, and it's going in... honestly, right now, I'm putting this in S tier. I think you can run copies of these in every single Kabloom class, and it will do you very, very well. And I've tested this card extensively, so that's where it's going. We did skip over Lava Guava. So again, this is for a 4-cost card. It does a ton. It can kill up to 3 zombies. It's doing 6 damage, which you just compare it to the 3-cost Sizzle, which is doing 5. This at 4 is doing 6. As long as you have 3 zombies all next to each other. But it's also making environments. It's doing 7 damage, max. It's also covering your opponent's environments. I think just running a couple of these in every deck just to cover your opponent's environments and have a really good answer to like Area 22 and stuff, and sometimes the upside is really, really big. This is a really, really good card. I'm going to put it in A tier. And finally, we got Poison Oak. So Poison Oak does 10 damage now. I mean... this is mostly going to be like in a Captain Combustible card, and you're just going to OTK them, or maybe use, there's a 10-cost combo now. You go Poison Oak, Grape, Power, Time to Shine. That's a 10-cost, 20 damage combo. That'll be fun. Ramping to this card with Solar Flare. It's definitely, again, I haven't had a chance to test this, but I think this is going to be solid. I'll put it in B tier. I think this is actually going to, because now it's doing 10, it's doing half. 2 of these kill an opponent. I think this is going to be a pretty good card now. I'm optimistically putting in B tier. It could belong in C. We're going to find out. Moving right along to Banana Peel. So Banana Peel has actually gone a lot worse. At 1 cost, it was so much easier to find opportunities to play. Now at 2, it's really rough. I mean, it's kind of just like Gardening Gloves. It does have this fruit synergy, and we'll be getting into half banana in just a second. You know how the fruit synergy works, but 2-cost Banana Peel, man, it's pretty bad. I think because of its usefulness, maybe in fruit decks. You're moving a zombie instead of moving a plant. Is that ever going to be better than moving a plant? It's basically worse. It's basically just Gardening Gloves, though. But it makes fruit. It makes fruit. Am I ever going to run this card anymore at 2 costs? Alright, if I have to be totally honest, I'm optimistic about fruit decks, but if I'm totally honest, this is probably going to be an F tier. I think it's actually just going to be a Gardening Gloves, and it's never going to end up being worth it. I think that's what's going on with Banana Peel. Next, we got Black Eyed Peas. So this was one of the most monumental nerfs. Went from 2-3 to 2-2. This is, I love seeing Black Eyed Pea when I'm playing zombies. I love seeing them play this. This does not... It has 2 problems. It dies to Bungee, dies to Extinction Event, easier to remove, but also this doesn't make the trades it used to. This used to be justified because it would trade well with cheese cutter, with swashbuckler, with anything that's a 2/2. Now it even trades. This isn't a good card anymore. Obviously, niche little bit. Again, Brainstorm, I guess, against like Immorticia, if they're not running Extinction Event, this would be good. I really don't think this is a good card anymore, guys. Where are we putting this? I don't think this is a good card. It's either low C or high D. Honestly, because I think right now this is overrated, legit, I'm putting it in D tier. And we'll find out if I'm right. We'll find out the hard way, guys. It's still a P. I don't care. It's trash. Next, we got Half Banana. Alright, so this is a really, really tough one. So banana, we're going to again go and take a look at what fruit are. So banana, Half Banana, it's a 2-cost, 2/2. When it dies, all of your fruit gain a 1/1 buff. The problem is that there's really no other fruit synergy in the game. So if you're playing this, you're putting a bunch of fruit in the deck, and there's really nothing except for Half Banana, and then the Half Bananas that come from your banana split, which is a very hard card. This is a very hard card to pull off, because it's extremely understated for a 2-cost card, but it also has a condition that it needs to die. There needs to be a zombie on the board killing this, and it only gets the bonus not when played, but when destroyed. Which is a very, very hard card to activate. The good news is fruit are very good. It's you can see the overall quality. Very, very solid. I mean, there's a lot of S tier cards here in the fruit tribe. Like a lot. This is going to be viable, and I'm really going to basically be placing this in the tier where the entire fruit synergy is going to lie. I don't think fruit is going to be top tier. Right now, it's Transfiguration, it's the Kabloom class, it's Pecanolith, are the really, really good decks. I'm going to be placing this in mediocre tier in B. Because again, fruit is viable. I'll be making a lot of fruit decks. There's one with Chompzilla. There's going to be one with with Green Shadow. Thank you, Ellie Broy, 77 months. Man, happy holidays to you. But yep, that's where I think that is going to go. The next, moving right along to... Well, we're in the Mega Grow class. We got Podfather. Is this going to be great because it has 3 health now instead of 2 health? It's going to survive a lot more. I think this is going to be viable. I don't think it's going to be great, but I think it's still going to be right along kind of where Half Banana is. This could end up surprising me and being higher. I'm conservatively saying, I'm guessing B tier, but I haven't tested this at all. I literally haven't even tested it. Again, the limitation, this is, this dies now to Alien Ooze, like, kills this. There's a lot of other cards that have been buffed that, are going to be causing a problem for Podfather. I guess Fruitcake, I guess the exploding, the cake card in the crazy class was reverted. It costs 4 again. I'm going to just wild guess B, but this might end up being a lot better. We're going to find out. Next, we got typical Beanstalk. Again, I don't think this really adds that much, to be honest, to the Leafy synergy. The fact now it's gaining 1 health and also drawing the card, so it's a 3/4. This card is kind of meh, and honestly, in Leafy decks, I'm not even necessarily running this. I think this is D tier, even with the buff, but I hope I'll be pleasantly surprised. Next, we got Cosmic P, which is now 4 cost 2/2 instead of 3 cost 1/1. So this is definitely better than it used to be, but again, why would you run a 4 cost 2/2 that draws a card and doesn't grow? I don't see it, guys. I don't see it. I'm guessing this is still going to be an F tier. It's so understated, and then it gives you, like, sometimes a good card, sometimes complete trash. It's not worth it for a 4 cost, man. Next, we got Powerhouse. It went from 3/3 to 4/4. I've seen some people have a little success, mostly the Powerhouse decks. I haven't tried it, but I've fought against them, and I've more or less whooped their butts because it's just not... It takes a long time for this card to get going. It actually is decent stats right now. I'm going to put this as a placeholder in C because I think this is actually, because of its higher stats, especially if you have plant food or time to shine, I think there is going to be some more uses for Potted Powerhouse. It only needs to get hit, by a few grows in order for it to have really good stats. Next, we have my boy Whipvine, one of my favorite design cards in PvZ Heroes. But again, for this to be ran in a deck at all over Gatling P, or the other 5 or 6 cost cards that you can be used as finisher. I don't know what this is. It's not a finisher. It's kind of a tempo card. Is it a control card? Maybe, I don't know. We got to definitely try Whipvine, but for me, I don't think this can be any higher than D tier. I don't think it's going to be very good. Next, we got Bamboozle, which went from 5-6 to 6-6. Great. So it's a mediocre statted. It used to be a mediocre statted 6-drop that was drawing cards way too late with a terrible condition, and now it's a average statted 6-drop drawing cards way too late. It's not a good card, guys. Putting that in F tier where it belongs. What about Super-phat beets, though? This thing could be a monster. We gotta try this with like mushrooms with Captain Combustible. Man, this is a really, really hard one. I don't think that this is gonna be that good. You gotta have plants on. I think even potted might even be better than this at this point, because this one needs plants to be on the board. Potted powerhouse, your plants are dead already, and you're still good. It's still gonna be a monster. I think it's gonna be in D tier. Next, we got cattail. This was moving on to the final class, and we'll also be doing like the plant superpowers at the end. Laser cattail. So this is a really interesting one. This really, again, one card pushes this to really good stats. It's a 3/3. I think this is a really big deal, and I think that the amount of creativity that can go into this, into Laser Cattail, is really, really off the charts. And I think there's going to I'm going to be super optimistic about Laser Cattail, and I'm actually putting it all the way in A tier. I think that we are going to, again, just predictions, I think we are going to find not just in amphibious decks, but just in decks in general. For example, just one thing I've been messing around with. Laser Cattail on 2, and that your Nightcap, so you play a... turn 3, you play an Imitator, and then turn 4, the Imitator turns into a Fig. So all of a sudden, your Laser Cattail is a 5/5 at that point, right? It went to 3 to 4 when it imitated, and then the Fig transforms, now it's a 5/5. So this can sometimes you have these weird engines that can really be buffing the Laser Cattail a lot, especially with, again, the transforming cards, together with Atomic Bombegranate. There's going to be a lot of really cute little uses. But even if you buff this one card, having this in the water, and then just sticking one other amphibious minion, you're already doing 5-6 damage. Easy in the water lane, and this is a really, really big threat. And it's going to have a lot of health, so it's going to be hard to take out. Cool. Do it with mixed nuts? Anyway, I'll find out. All right. Lightning Reed. I've had a very small opportunities to do this. It's actually half decent. It's a half decent card. It does a lot of damage for a 2-cost card. Soon 4. It protects itself. It's going to be hard for me to put this over C tier, but at least it's not the F tier trash that it used to be. And again, we're going to have to find a home for this. It is amphibious. So maybe in is amphibious a tempo class, or is it more of a control class? There's 2 ways of playing amphibious. In the control version, this will be useful, and especially if there ends up being like a lot of aggro and a lot of mini ninjas, a lot of little things that die to 1 damage. I think this actually will end up being useful to control those. So I'm putting it in C tier. It does a lot. Try it out, guys. Next, we got Magic Beans. 2 costs is putting 5 beans into your deck. I still think this is F tier. I don't know. Again, you can make a meme deck where you're doing this. There's no good card draw on the plant side. That's the problem. If you had really efficient, if Flourish, the one thing I really wish they would have done in this last patch is make this card cost 2. This would change the game, because now plants can draw cards out of their deck, not just conjuring random stuff from Photosynthesizer. But anyway, maybe next patch. You know what? The devs in one of the side notes, they said that they're really planning on nourishing this game this next year. So hopefully that'll be one of the things that they consider. But in the meantime, yeah. So Magic Beans is putting now 5 cards. It's obviously a little better, but Magic Beans needs to draw a card. The reason this doesn't draw a card anymore is back when it had a high win rate in Cycle Cap. Cycle Cap got nerfed, so Magic Beans didn't need to get done so dirty like that. Next, we got Mayflower. I'm kind of excited about Mayflower because it's a fun card, but really how good the card is, I don't expect Mayflower to actually be really higher than C tier. It's going to be fun to mess around with this. Again, it's in the amphibious lane. It has 4 health. It only has 2 attack, though. So it still basically gets negated by extinction event. There's a lot of alien, there's a lot of things that really, can get rid of that 2 attack. That's not going to be drawing the cards anymore. It's going to be hard to find a home. Also, you're putting this in a bean deck. Doesn't really make sense, the synergy, but cards are cards, so it'll be useful. I don't think it's going to be that efficient. You also have a problem with the block meter. This gets blocked. If this had Bullseye, this would be a completely different card, because then it would actually be drawing more efficiently. Next, we got Bean Counter. Alright, so Bean Counter got nerfed to 1/1, and now it has Team Up. It doesn't say it on the card, but it's a Team Up card. That was the plan with Bean Counter, it turns out, all along. I don't think this is a good card. People are saying, oh, Bean Counter, the Team Up, it matters so much because now you can put it behind things, but it's still a 4-cost 1/1. That takes so much time just to get the 3/3 stats. You're going to have to spend 6 sun total, so it's basically unplayable on 4. And if you're playing on 6, you're basically playing a 3/3 with 2 1/1 weenie beanies. I don't think this is a good card, and I think this is just... if anything, this is worse than it used to be honest. Honestly, take it to the bank. I'm putting this in F tier. I don't think it's good. Next, we got Cartillery. I'm really excited to see what the new face of aggro decks on the plant side is going to be. And this is a card I'm really going to be keeping an eye on. I think this is going to be a really big deal. 5/3 not only being good, aggressive stats, but team up also. So it's basically not charging your opponent's block meter an extra time, so it's like a semi... every team up card is kind of like a semi bullseye. I think this is decent. It's only going to be an aggro card though, and for that reason I'll put it in C tier. It's going to be hard to use. Honestly, I'm keeping it in C tier for now, but I'm interested to see if we can get this higher. Next, Leaf Blower is a really, really hard one. The buff this got is the fact that now it bounces both zombies and gravestones. So really, really high value card. The, of course, problem is it needs to be in a plant environment, and plant environments are kind of trash. Bog seems to be the best plant environment right now because it costs 2 and it actually does something for a 2-cost card. Obviously, you have the amphibious synergy there because Leaf Blower is an amphibious card, so that's cool. I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I'm gonna go on a... This is so hard. It's low A, high B. All right. I think if I'm really trying to be honest, I really want this to be really good, but I don't think it's actually as good because, again, it is an understated card that has a really tough condition to fulfill, and that's the fact that an environment is in play, and it really, even if you're running 4 in your deck, that's not always going to happen. Man, I want this card to be good. I'm putting it as a placeholder in B tier. Next, oh boy, Navy Bean is the real deal right now. I really think this is a very, again, 4-cost 4/4 plant amphibious bean team up. It has everything, and it's on par stats. And the fact that this is buffing 1 card, you got 1 Rhotabag on the board, 1 Marine Bean, 1 Cattail that this is hitting. This is a big deal of a card, and this is going to carry the entire amphibious class. And I'm going to be putting this in A tier because I've already seen Navy Bean absolutely pop off. I can't wait to do streams with the various amphibious decks, and it's really going to be about Navy Bean really, really popping off and giving the stats to the board, besides for having extremely good stuff. For a plant, 4-cost 4/4 amphibious team up, Bean being one of the better tribes, it itself is a very good card. Next, even if you don't have any amphibious on the board, Snapdragon got buffed to amphibious. This anyway is a decent card. This can get a ton of value if your opponent can't answer it. It's really just about opponent answering it. Alien News got buffed, so that makes Snapdragon worse. Alien News kills this. Even if you add health to it, it's not attacking if it gets Alien News. This is always has been a decent card. I don't think the amphibious is going to be worth it. I don't think you're just going to run this in amphibious decks. It's hard for me to see because you already have other 4-cost amphibious cards in the same class that you're running. But I think this is just going to be a solid card in B tier, regardless. I don't remember what I put in the last time. Next, we got Melon-pult. It went from 3/4 to 3/5 stats. Again, it's going to be hard to find a home for this. I don't think because of 5 cost, I think you're really just going to go Snapdragon. I don't think it's going to see a lot of play. It's okay, but for 5 cost, man, I think at that point just still run Snapdragon. I'm putting it in D tier instead of being in like an F, but I don't think it's a really good card anymore. It also has Fruit Synergy. I don't think that's how you're playing fruit decks. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Melon-pult just ends up on the top of the tier list. Next, we got Winter Melon. This card does a lot more than it used to freezing. Now, the freeze, when played freeze a zombie, this is still random. If this was a targeted freeze, this would be so high up. This would be A tier, easy A tier. The freeze is random, so if there's only one zombie on the board, it doesn't make a difference. A random freeze is still something. It's still killing a random guy, or at least freezing it for an attack phase. Killing it if you have a winter squash on the board. Buffing your snow peas. But it's doing a lot. It leaves value even if it gets removed. And then the upside, obviously, of this attacking and basically perma-stunning zombies is a pretty big deal. We're also living in a meta where seeing big zombies, since big zombies have been buffed, this card also is buffed now. This card becomes better because this likes to be played into a big zombie and not get removed by a rocket science. It's not an A tier card, though. I'm going to stick this solidly in B because it's going to be a staple of freeze decks, but just in general, even ramping to this, it's going to be a pretty big deal. Actually, I'm really interested in seeing what happens when we ramp to Mirror Nut. I'm going to put in B tier. Next, we got Pumpkin. This is so tough now to be running because Pumpkin anyway has been something that, you know, it's the fact is drawing your opponent cards. If you've had any close games, those cards are going to make a really, really big difference. Pumpkin now only being a 4/1, it still does a ton for a 1-cost card. It's still decent. It's still a decent card. And I think this probably could see some play as we see the meta shift maybe a little bit away from Beastly and Nibble, because Nibble kills this so badly now. It's also conjuring your opponent cards, man. I'm very skeptical about this, and my guess is it's actually going to be, and especially from my experience over the last few years, and now this only has 1 health, I'm going to put this in C, because I think that this is going to be viable, maybe about the same amount Cartillery will, but it's going to be really, really tough to pull off. Next, we got Apple Saucer, which only also has 1 health, so it's a terrible stat card for a 2-cost card. Still, again, can be used for aggro late in games. The fact that it strike through, it's still decent. This is not what it used to be, though. It's so easy to kill. There's so many things in the game that do 1 damage. Even just a random, you know, even just a random dead ghost that your opponent got because you're running Haunted Pumpkin just kills these cards now. I really think this has gotten nerfed to the point of obscurity. It's still like a cute little strike-through cards. Maybe we'll see it being used with like onion rings. Or maybe with plant food, some combo like that, but I'm just gonna stick this together with Pumpkin. I think this was a pretty big nerf. I guess it's a fruit, so you can do it together with half banana. Next, we have, I think, actually one of the most underrated cards in PvZ Heroes right now. This is really, really good. -2/2, it negates so many things in the game. Either low health or even just a low attack guy just ends up doing nothing from water balloons. I think this will become a very big staple in solar control decks once people realize, and then later in the game it does 3/3, which is absolute insane value for a 2-cost card. I think this is super, super solid. Honestly, I'm putting water balloons in A tier because I think there's going to be this entire genre of control decks, and water balloon is going to be part of it, especially if you're not the Kabloom. If you're the Kabloom, you're going to be running Berry Blast instead, and Berry Blast is the better card. But if you're not Kabloom and you are solar and you're trying to play control, I think this is going to be 4 copies auto include every single deck. It's a big deal. Next. Lower your plans. Next. Synergy with Hammer. Synergy with Hammer. I like it. Next, we got a very cute card, Cross-pollination. I love this, so I want to put this higher. Competitively, though, this is pretty good because you're getting you're really, this only costs 1 to draw 2 cards, to conjure 2 cards, because each of those cards cost 1 less. So you're kind of netting 1 sun for the conjures. And then if you have a Captain Cucumber, It's basically 0 at that point. It's -1 because you're playing each of them for 2 less. This will be good with onion rings because you like to draw cards. This is a really cute and probably better, not a card draw card, but a stuff your hand with cards card, a conjure card, as opposed to flourish. This is decent. This is decent, and it's going to see play. And I think there's a lot of really cool uses for this. And again, it was also making fruit and flowers, which are pretty good tribes. I'm going to put this in B tier. Just a way of getting some, not running out of cards, you know? I think there's a lot there. Next, my boy Magnifying Grass, which again, this card is really only a Chompzilla card because you really need to have plant food. A nerf Magnifying Grass to do that big attack. But the fact, again, it has 2 health instead of 1 is a big deal. I mean, it means it can live easier from turn to turn. So you don't necessarily need to get all the value with an instant plant food. It doesn't change the card a whole lot in terms of how you're actually running it. But I do think Magnifying Grass is pretty decent. It's either low A or high B. I think just because it's only useful with 1 hero, probably. Obviously, Sunstrike doesn't even give the strike through anymore, so you can't go for that. I'll put it in like high B tier, but this is a really, really good card with onion rings and with plant food. Next, oh man, this is a really tough one. Where do I think Venus Flytrap? Is this gonna see any play? This is like could be S tier and this could be F tier, literally. This can do so much. I want to use Mega Grow cards to buff this. I think we're in a place where this is now not obscure. This really does. It can just even trade and heal. This can get so much value. It's a plant too. So you can play it carefully and play around your opponent's tricks, man. Oh, I want this to be good. I'm going to have to realistically put it in B tier. But I think there's going to be some crazy uses, and this is going to be something that, together with a bonus attack, this is something that can, or with a buff, this is something that can flip a game. Imagine putting this into, like, Red Planet. That now you got a a huge heal coming on every single turn. It probably is in C. Am I being too optimistic putting this in B? Alright, I'm going to realistically put this in C tier. Next! Man, our tier list is getting too big here. Hold on, we gotta do a little shrinky. And I did not do that enough. Not at all. There! It's beautiful now. Ugly as hell. What am I saying? And there. Now it's beautiful. Next. Elderberry went from 4 health to 3 health. It's a pretty big nerf. There's a lot of things that can kill something for 3 and not for 4, obviously. I think this is still a pretty good card. It's not going to be its former glory, but I think this is still actually very solid. I'm going to put it in A tier. Next, we have Cob Cannon. Cob Cannon, I think right now might be the... I don't really know what people think, but this is probably the most underrated card in PvZ Heroes right now. 6/6 to 4/6 didn't actually make that big of a difference at all. This card still does a ton for a single 6-cost card. Having team-ups in your deck is automatic. It doesn't have that finishing value. I'm going to be putting this, though, up in A tier. This really might actually be an S, and this card still might be broken. It probably is still an S tier card. I like to convince myself that now 3-headed Chomper is actually like competitively comparable to Cob Cannon, because now this is a 6/6 and it has kind of a similar ability. 3-headed Chomper is still a lot worse than Cob Cannon. This kills something immediately. This can kill little 1-health zombies. This can take care of zombie aggro decks, which are very strong. Honestly, I'm keeping Cob Cannon S tier. I think this card is actually now, instead of being ridiculously broken, it's now just absolute top-notch, top tier. Next, we got Laser Beam. Such a cool card. So besides for playing this with onion rings, really, again, having 6, 7, 8 damage strike through, this is a big card, man. I'm putting this in, I think this is going to be A tier. I don't think it's going to quite be S. And I think there's also a lot of rocket sciences to deal with the figs, which also make this a lot worse. The main way you want to deal with a strike-through card is some instant removal, and rocket science is like the best answer to laser beam. But it's a really, really big card, great finisher, great ramp card, and yeah. Man, in ramp decks, this thing's going to go wild. Because if you have 11 Sun, you didn't just like, oh, okay, I have 11 Sun, I have nothing to spend it on. No, it's putting money on your board. And I think that's a pretty big deal with the Laser Beam, especially late in games when they don't have any removal cards. Laser Beam's going to be king. Alright, and we're moving on. Finally, that was all the cards. We'll just do the superpowers now that have been changed. And we are starting off with none other than Morspore. Morspore was absolute trash, but the fact you can target one of the mushrooms makes it so much better. It's still not a great superpower, as I'm going to use this, not comparing it obviously to cards you're running in your deck, but to other superpowers. But I'll put this solidly in C tier because it's actually decent, and I do like getting Morspore now because it's like a guaranteed chump block. It's almost like a summoning on the zombie side that can theoretically clog like an extra lane and chump block an extra thing. Like during the attack phase, this is a very effective chump blocker, and you know, just in terms of setting up lanes properly in case you have a Pine Clone or the Gloom Shroom. It definitely was a huge buff. Next we have Grass Knuckles Superpower, which even though I think Grass Knuckles is still, because of his class, is a very strong hero, this ultimate ability is absolute bottom of the barrel, complete trash. This is F tier. This is probably the worst ultimate ability in the game. This really might even be worse than beta. Obviously, if you're playing exactly against an aggro deck that's spamming a lot of minions, this is good. But honestly, those decks are just running Mustache Waxer and other things that don't die to 2 damage anyway. The fact it's not hitting face, the fact it was hit, this was really bad before, but the fact it could do 6 damage to your opponent's face gave it some credit, but now this is very, very bad. A very bad card, very easy to play around, and very ineffective. Alright, we got Solar Flare Super, so again, even though this card still says the new ability of do 2 damage, gain 2 sun, this does the old ability. They reverted the actual effect of this back. Now, do 2 damage, and for every turn for the rest of the game, you gain 1 extra sun on each of those turns. This is one of the best superpowers in the game, and I still think this deserves a rework. This is really, really unfair to get on, especially on turn 1. Later in games, it doesn't matter. Later in games, the new Solar Flare was better. I'm not really sure why they reverted it. I guess they didn't like the turn 1 Sunflower. I guess people were complaining about that too much. I don't really know exactly why. They reverted this because I thought the new change was, I thought it was something special. But anyway, this is actually going in double S tier because I really do think that Solar Flare Super needs a rework. It's so oppressive to get this on the first turn of the game. It's almost like the huge Giganticus of the plants. All right, next we have the Ensign Uproot. This card is actually an overall nerf. I know it's amphibious now, so it got amphibious, but it lost to health. In 90% of situations, this is a nerf. Even in an amphibious deck, you really want that 2/2 because to contest a Headstone Garb or a Conman, anything that's a, a 1/3, this would be blocking a space-time for 2 turns. Now it doesn't do anything. This really, really got hit very, very badly with the 1 health, and the amphibious didn't help at all. Like this was a nerf, and it's pretty bad. I mean, it's still a 2/1. It's still a superpower. I mean, I can't put it lower than Morspore. It's got to be like B tier. But yeah, it just doesn't do what it used to be. And the Lieutenant Tricarrotops that is drawing the card is arguably going to be better than the little lane switch. It's not always going to be useful. Most of the time you see this, it's just on turn 1 taking out, a 1-drop that they played or something like that. Beta Keratina Superpower is still really, really bad. The fact is gaining 2/1, again, in certain situations, you have a stronger amphibious minion. This is still really unreliable, and it's really, really slow to develop. It takes 3 to play this, kind of overpowered plant, but you're still spending 3 on it, and sometimes it's just water chestnut. This is definitely better. The 2/1, it's definitely better than it used to be, but especially because this is a signature power. It's not just a insane uproot, and it doesn't do anything during the attack phase when you're blocking. It's a huge part of superpowers. You block and they save you, and this does nothing except for trigger dino roars during the attack phase. It's really bad. If I'm comparing it to ultimate abilities, I'm still keeping this in D tier. I don't think it's very good. And this was just more spore. I just used a different icon. That looks a lot better. Anyway, guys, let's try to get this entire thing up on the screen for you guys so you can see it all. Why do I not have a scroll? Where's my little bar here? Why is there no? There's usually on Chrome like a little bar that you can use to scroll up, but it doesn't exist. All right, can you see everything? Is this everything here, guys? There, you can see the entire tier list now. My Chrome is glitching out. But anyway, guys, I will be remaking this tier list in a few months after I really get a good chance to really test these cards, and we'll maybe compare it to this one. This will be a great placeholder and compare it to see. I'm really excited to see some of these cards I really did not give enough credit being really good, and perhaps vice versa. So anyway, guys, that was all the plants and plant superpowers that have been changed in the tier list. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. This is Fry.